Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Community Exchange podcast, where we sit with friends, old and new, to talk about their careers and what's shaping the future of media and advertising. I'm Matthew Scott Goldstein, better known as
MSG for my ramen.
Love it. As always, the Community Exchange podcast is brought to you by OpenWeb, the community platform of the open internet. Now we have a great conversation for you with Carolyn Harris, SVP of Content Monetization. I love that term. USA Today. Caroline is a media executive who drives innovative content monetization and strategic partnership building, diversified digital revenue streams across distribution, commerce, licensing, and gaming. Okay, Caroline, where do you want to start? Let's start at the BBC.
Yes.
Your first biggest job out of college.
That's really where my career took off.
And what year are we? 2007.
2007.
Right at the Great Recession.
Right before, right?
Okay.
Right before things kind of started crumbling in our economy. But it was also at a really interesting time in our industry, in the media industry, right? And
okay, I don't remember that well, so refresh us.
So I consider myself somebody that grew up in a time when things were shifting between how consumers were interacting with media and how technology was evolving to meet those changes, or how consumer changes were reacting to how technology was evolving as well, right? So it was just as streaming was starting to take off.
Facebook was been around for a little bit there.
Like a hot minute.
Okay, wasn't that big.
It wasn't that big. YouTube wasn't that big.
Netflix was still in the mail.
Right? And so, like Amazon and Apple and iTunes and all of these other big
and this is where they were like $10 billion companies versus $1 trillion stock
That's
companies.
right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. So in that job, I was responsible for the distribution of our content to these new emerging platforms.
And this was BBC
worldwide.
Primarily in the UK business still, right? With some...
So it's two sides of the business, right? So BBC had the public service, and then it had its commercial arm, which was called BBC Worldwide at the time. Okay. And I was part of the U.S. operation that was responsible for the commercialization of the content outside of the UK. Was it a small company
in the U.S. then? Okay.
Yeah. It was a small team, small scrappy team. We had BBC America in our office as well.
Okay.
And this was way before the AMC takeover. So BBC America was still part of the portfolio. And BBC America was the channel, right, that had all the content from the UK that would translate to American audiences.
Which is some of the best content out there.
Some of the best content.
Some of the mysteries that they do are phenomenal. Okay.
Yes. Except for the frock dramas, right? A lot of the frock dramas had been licensed to PBS for many, many years and were locked up in those deals. And a lot of the natural history content was on Discovery. So you might remember like Planet Earth was a big show. So that was a big production when I was at BBC Worldwide. So my job was to kind of get rights cleared for international distribution, for U.S. distribution of BBC content.
And who were you selling it to then?
So initially we were selling it to VOD and pay-per-view operators.
Okay.
All right, so most of the MVPDs, the cable operators. But very quickly, we were having conversations at Amazon and at Netflix and many others, and with YouTube.
So you were in really early.
Really, really early.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So it was so interesting to be at the very start of how streaming took off, right? We weren't even calling it streaming at the time. And I remember having the conversation with Netflix about how we price our content in this new model, right? In this new modality. And I like to tell the story because it relates a lot back to what's happening now in AI marketplaces and how do we price our content, right? And the pricing conversations that we're having as publishers with the LLMs, right? But at the time, we were like, okay, well, maybe like a cents per stream might make sense.
Oh, you wanted to get money on usage from Netflix or something.
Right. And so that's...
And they wanted to give you a flat fee?
Right. Well, not even a flat fee, a cents per stream.
Okay.
So it wasn't a bulk fee or anything like that, but it was a cents per stream. And we said, okay, let's try it out. And so I was in those early conversations, those first conversations.
But then you had skin in the game to make
Right.
great content, because the better content you had, the more streams you had, and therefore you make more sense.
Exactly. So we opened up the pipe of content to Netflix. Came up with a list of shows that were rights cleared and had full series available. And the minute the switch was flipped on, it just took off, right? Beyond anybody's wildest dreams, like including Netflix, right?
Okay.
And so that cents per stream model just kind of immediately blew up their entire kind of business. And so they had to immediately come back to the table and renegotiate all of their deals.
I never thought about pricing, but pricing was the key of that marketplace.
Right. So we had to go back to the table and figure out what model would make more sense.
Which then turned into a flat fee, right?
Right. But before that, we had this wild cents per stream model that, like I said, it maybe lasted a week or two before they said, this is, or it's going to crash our entire business.
Because it was so successful.
Yeah.
And Netflix originally.
Yeah, so successful, right? From mail-in to streaming was virtually an overnight adoption.
And did they change? Didn't they have two separate companies at one point, Netflix? Yes, they did.
I don't remember.
They split up into two separate companies. They had two different names, and
I remember they renamed themselves at one point.
Yeah, it was a separate. One was okay.
Yeah, and then very quickly changed it up.
Producer Andrew will get us that name.
This was a big. Yeah, they said it was a big. I remember it was a big mea culpa.
Yes.
And he said it was a big mistake, and they changed the name back to Netflix.
So that was your whole beginning world in 2007, 8, 9 with Netflix and BBC content and everyone else doing cents per stream. That went away to flat fee pricing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was. I feel very fortunate I had a seat at the table to help shape those models, right? And so I was part of the earliest conversations with Amazon and Prime streaming video.
Same conversation.
Same kind of conversations, right? And we were a launch partner. So we were literally shaping what the model was going to be.
And this was before they were making a ton of content, right?
Way before they were making their own original content.
Okay.
Yeah. Same with Netflix. This was before House of Cards.
What year was House of Cards?
Ooh.
I don't know. Okay, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were at BBC doing all this at the center of marketplaces, trying to figure out pricing.
Right.
And then how long were you at BBC for?
I was there for about 7 years.
Okay.
Right. And those were extremely formative years for me and my career as a business developer, formative years for the industry. And so we were a launch partner with Netflix and their streaming service, with Prime Video, with Hulu when they launched, with YouTube when they brought on their first major partners in news. So we launched our BBC News channel on YouTube, and it was one of the first groups of deals that they had done. They did one, I think, with Viacom.
I'm amazed you didn't stay in the streaming CTV world your entire career.
I was there for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there for a while.
Okay. So after BBC, you then went to Scripps.
I went to Scripps. It was called Scripps Networks Interactive.
Before they were bought by
Discovery.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what'd you do at Scripps?
So very similar. So I stayed on a very similar track, but I worked more on the kind of marketing partnerships side of things. So we had another part of the team that was responsible for getting the deals done, and then my team was responsible for partner success.
Okay. It wasn't called partner success back then.
No, it wasn't.
That's like a new term, right?
No, yeah. But using a current term, that's really what it was.
Okay, so once your content from Discovery Scripps went into Netflix, you then tried to make sure people watched it, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right. And at the time, electronic sell-through was still a big thing for a lot of our video producers and media companies. So we had a large deal with Apple for iTunes, selling our content a la carte in that model, and so that was a big part of my job. But I spent many years launching our TV Everywhere apps. I don't know if you remember those.
A little bit.
So that was like the precursor to Max, right?
Yes.
To what is now these streaming apps that everybody is very accustomed to subscribing to. But these were apps that we were launching for each channel, for Food Network, HGTV, in partnership with our cable operator
Scripps
friends.
had some phenomenal cable TV networks back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
They had some of the best.
Some of the best, yes. And just the kind of series that people put on and left on all day long.
Yep.
We called it wallpaper.
Okay.
But great ratings, great hosts, great shows that still to this day people love and adore, and I think that's why it made it such a valuable asset, and what makes it still a valuable asset in the Paramount conversations with Discovery.
Right, and then you were doing customer success, partner success for Scripps. For your 6, 7, 8 years you were there.
That's right. Yeah, and launching our TV Everywhere apps.
Okay.
Right.
And then how'd you wind up in USA Today? How'd that all happen?
So I had a quick...
Or it was Gannett first, or it was Gannett then?
Yeah, it was Gannett. So I had a very short stint at Food 52, which was an investment property of Scripps. Made sense in the Food Network kind of HGTV portfolio. And so as Scripps and Discovery were merging, that was a really good time for me to try something new, try a startup, see if that was something that made sense for my career as the next move. And so I spent a short period of time there, but learned a lot about affiliate marketing and products, in e-commerce. And then as things were kind of shifting for that industry and for that company, I decided to go back into big media, because that's where I really, that's where I cut my chops. That's where I love to be. I love to be in a larger legacy media company, but bringing them into outside of their legacy box, right, into how the industry is evolving, right? And so that's really defined my career, right? From the BBC and doing those first deals to Scripps to continuing that on and launching streaming apps.
And sometimes I forget how people who ended up where they are today in the publisher world came from such interesting backgrounds, and they bring that knowledge with them in everything they do. And it's so fascinating to see the different stories.
Yeah. Like it's like being a shepherd for these companies to really help them understand what the opportunities are in the evolving landscape, right? And then be the bridge between them and technology companies that are really
and like you said, it's beyond the core business that they're used to doing.
Way beyond the core business,
monetize it in other ways?
Yeah. And so one of my core skills is really in diplomacy and kind of herding people around an idea, galvanizing people around
internally,
new ideas
inside your company,
inside my company. Yeah. And helping frame what could be perceived or seen as a threat into an opportunity.
Okay. And what year did you get to Gannett USA Today?
I got there in 2019.
Okay.
So that was also a really interesting time to join a company because at the time, I was considering my next move, right? Should I continue on that kind of streaming path, like you said, right?
Go to Netflix, go to Hulu, right?
Right. Jump to the other side of the fence. I do love being on the content creator side of things, because then that allows me to work with a whole variety of different technology partners. And so I also wanted to learn more about news and publishing, because that was a gap for me. I worked a little bit in that realm when I was at the BBC. Right. And that was very interesting to me when I did get a chance to do that with my partners in BBC News. But it was never something that I was totally in. That was not part of my kind of core knowledge. And at the time in 2019, especially, news was under threat, right? The facts were under threat. And I wanted to help an organization that I loved. I always loved USA Today, always felt that it was so iconic and really down the middle and really needed in a time when everything was either on one side or the other, and it was so divisive in terms of like what people were watching in news and gravitating toward news. And I just felt like like a moth to the flame in terms of like I need to help this company and be part of this company's long-term sustainability, and I know how to do that based on my past. And there was an opening.
Was it weird that you were in New York and they're all in Virginia?
There was a lot of travel to Virginia
Okay.
at the time. Yeah. So 2019, right before the pandemic, right before a lot of things happened. So news became so important in the next few years in a way that it wasn't before, right? So news was under threat, and then suddenly news was so important. Still under threat in a lot of ways, right? Questioning of facts and efficacy and
just to be clear, Gannett is USA Today,
It's
and
USA
it's also
Today.
all the local properties as well, right?
over 200 local publications.
And that's the biggest local newspaper company in the United States and the world.
That's correct.
And Hearst is number 2, maybe?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are the largest. We reach 1 and 2 adults in
Across
the US.
local and U.S. Local
That's
and
right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. And we generate over 186 million page views a month.
Okay.
So we are the most consumed in terms of all of news media.
Okay. And then at Gannett, you were doing, it was always content monetization?
That's right. So I was doing, I started in a new role that never even existed before in distributing their content off platform. So prior to me joining, the prior leadership at Gannett felt that they wanted to keep everybody on platform. And so none of their content was distributed off their platform. So there were no deals. There were no deals.
Snap, nothing.
There were some social distribution, social pages, Facebook pages, and
But no
things
money
like
changing
that.
hands.
But
Okay.
right, no formal money exchanging hands, and no formal distribution deals. So, so it was there was a ton of low hanging fruit when I joined. So when I
It's always a good time to join when
Yeah.
there's low-hanging fruit.
yeah, it's like okay, well we need to do these 10 deals and
Yeah.
and so we just banged that out, right? Got some deals done. There were some early deals done with.
Can you list some of the deals you did?
Yeah,
initially?
so Microsoft News, Yahoo
Okay.
News. So those were just in their infancy when I joined.
Okay.
There was somebody on the team who had just started getting those together, and then when I jumped in, I just kind of ran with that. And then Apple News, right? Apple News distribution was another opportunity for us, and so there were tons of news aggregators that were popping up at the time, like Newsbreak.
And did they want the
Smart News as well.
national news or the local news or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So USA Today was a no-brainer. We could get that distributed really quickly because we didn't have a huge kind of subscription base for USA Today. It was mostly free and available advertising based publication. So that all could be distributed really quickly. And then my team worked on how, sort of like going back to what I was saying about how to get everybody kind of around an idea that may have seemed kind of threatening, got people around the idea of distributing our local news as well. So that took a little longer, but yeah, we're at the point now where we have distribution deals that include both USA Today and locals, and so those deals were done, and then we cut a lot of kind of B2B deals as well. So we're also distributing our archives, and so that was
USA Today is how old? It's like
it's 43 years old.
But the local news is much older, right?
Some papers go back 200 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have great just like all of American history baked into the body of our content because some of our publications have been around that long.
So then COVID kicks in. You're working at home now, so you don't have to travel.
Right.
And how was that for the beginning?
Well, like for everybody, it was a little scary, right? What does this mean for for our jobs and our livelihoods and connecting with teams? Like I commuted every single day and met with many of my team members face to face
in New York or in DC?
In New York and DC.
Okay.
I traveled a lot to DC. Had FaceTime with our executive team, with my teammates, and then suddenly we were.
Yeah.
At home, but it was a time where we bonded over all the things that we were going through and on a personal level, and that we really found this new mission. It's a newfound mission. We always have the mission to, to inform the public, right? To deliver to our communities all the information that they need, especially in times of crisis. But this really reinforced it. It was such a compounding moment for our company and for the individuals that worked in that company to really feel grounded in the mission. Like it, I sleep well at night because I know that what I do for a living helps people in their everyday lives versus a little bit, it's a different, it's a shift from what I was doing before. I was working in entertainment, and entertaining people is really important too. But now that I'm in news, I feel that I'm delivering something so much more important and needed and essential. And we had people in our in our printing presses who were deemed essential workers at the time.
That's right.
They had to go in every single day.
And then where were you when chat launched, right? When OpenAI launches chat in November of 22, I'm pretty sure it is, and everything changed. I don't remember it being a line in the sand moment when it happened. It feels like it all happened afterwards.
Yeah, it didn't feel watershed at the time.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that whenever, I've always kind of been in this place where we have our eyes and ears open to what's trending, right? What's new, what's breaking in terms of a new technology that could be disruptive to our industry. And at that time, it wasn't immediately, but we were all thinking okay, this is going to potentially be big, but we don't know what it means yet, right? And so it's only been, I think, over the past 18 months where we're starting to feel the effects of it. Yeah. Where adoption is just caught on.
And then your job then became so much more important, so much more critical to the entire company, giving the power of Gemini and Anthropic Claude and chat.
That's right. I think, it shifted for me for sure in the company where initially with these distribution deals with Yahoo and Microsoft and Apple they were extending reach. That was a nice additional revenue stream. We have these archive
and they weren't
deals.
Scraping your content.
They weren't scraping our content, so it wasn't a response to a threat or a response to a bad action.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff.
Yeah. But it was a response to consumer behavior, right? It was a response to that, which is important, right? And consumer behaviors and trends moving off platform in a way is a perceived threat, right? So, but not in the same way that we're seeing.
But some of the answer agents do such a good job of giving you what you want, how you want it, when you want it, right? It's phenomenal.
They do. We still do a better job of delivering breaking news.
Breaking news is a whole different category.
So totally different. Right?
Breaking news, you cannot you can't even go to Google for breaking news sometimes. You have to go to the source.
That's
such.
Right.
There you go. Producer Andrew, it's breaking news, yes.
That's right. And so that's what, again, these compounding moments of why we're still relevant, why we're still important, why we're still essential. You just said it, right? So we're the boots on the ground.
I couldn't imagine going to find anything about the Iran war that's happening right now to Chat or Claude or anything.
No.
It just feels like it would get it all wrong.
Right. But importantly for us, how do you find out what's happening in your local community?
Same thing.
That's the same thing, right?
So the breaking news and the local news you cannot get from. Okay.
That's right. Who's gathering those facts? Who's doing the journalism, right? A human being will always have to do that.
Okay, and how many deals, if you can, I think you can talk about most of the deals you've done, right?
Yes.
At USA Today, publicly. So which ones have you publicly talked about?
So we've talked about we've had a series of Amazon deals that have been announced, and we've been very fortunate to be launch partners, both with Amazon's new endeavors in the space, Perplexity with their Comet browser. We were a Comet browser launch partner. And Meta was announced at the end of last.
And today is March 4th, And the announcement just came out yesterday that Walt News Corp, right?
News Corp.
Just did a big deal with Meta.
That's right.
And what was the quote that Robert Thompson made?
Woo and sue.
Woo and sue. So we will try to woo you.
Right.
And then after we woo you, if things don't work, we will sue you because you've been taking and stealing our content. So we're going to sue you.
Right. So it's an interesting. That's an interesting tactic, right? It's an interesting strategy.
But not too many brands can do that strategy.
No. I mean, I think it takes a lot of leverage, right? And a long-term plan, right? What does that mean? So they obviously have a plan. If the wooing doesn't work and then suing is their next step, what does that mean for them long-term?
And suing is also very expensive. It's not that easy to sue.
Right. You have to have the fund. You have to coffers.
Like I remember looking at the New York Times annual report, and I think they were spending $3 to $4 million a quarter on the OpenAI lawsuit they had.
That's right.
And it's probably just external. There might be more costs. It's crazy expensive for these companies to sue.
Crazy expensive. It's a massive distraction. But if you have the resources, the time, and the money to spend on it, I suppose that is, I respect that strategy. And we'll see whether or not those strategies are effective. It's a bet.
Okay, so we said Amazon, Perplexity, Meta,
and Microsoft.
Yeah, the PCM, the Publisher Content Marketplace.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And are there more? What happens? Like, are they giving you reports and information? Anything else interesting out there you can share with us?
Yeah, we're also part of Snowflake Marketplace, so that's another marketplace deal we did actually last year.
With Snowflake, isn't that all finance related?
Not all,
No.
but it's
Okay.
it's a it's more of a B2B platform. So we.
That's impressive. All these deals.
Yeah. Thank you. We're very proud of the variety of deals that we've done. We're really proud that we've been a launch partner, like I said, in many of these instances, and it's allowed us that opportunity that I brought up again, which I'll bring up again, which is having that seat at the table to really mold what these things become.
Right, because most of them don't know what they need to
They
be
don't know what they
initially, and
need
there's a
yet.
handful of publishers who are going to help form it to make it be the best it can be.
Right. When we ask, okay, what will this be used for? Those answers aren't always at the ready when we're doing the deal. But I know from the experience of doing these types of deals before the product's fully formed that you want to be part of forming it. And so, in terms of woo and sue, we're wooing, right? And that's been the stance that we've been taking, is that we're going to partner and so that we can get that opportunity to help shape what the products become and how our content is used in those products and in those instances. And we want to make sure that what does get created is using our high quality, fact-based journalism that we work so hard to make the most and the best of. So that all that said, we are negotiating really carefully and making sure that there are guardrails and that long-term value is preserved for our content, and that our content is receiving fair market value for.
And it all goes back to BBC, right?
Yeah, it does go right.
Is it flat pricing? Is it per usage? Like that? It's amazing. That's Andrew. That's like full circle. What's happening?
It's very full circle. Harkens right back to a lot of those deals that I was involved in negotiating early on in my career. So it echoes back and forth so much, and that's why I'm in the position that I'm in, and why me and my team are responsible for the stewardship of these AI licensing partnerships and the stewardship of bringing this company into this new age of how media is consumed and used.
Has the content, have you got any information back from the buyers of your content that changed the way that editorial thinks about how they're making content? Like, has that come back? Like
not in the AI examples yet. have had a long history of that so far over the last 7 years or so that I've been in my position. Like I said, doing these deals with our partners on, at Microsoft and Yahoo and Apple for their, and their news platforms. That there is a constant feedback loop actually that we built into
Right, because most of the
partnerships.
relationships are based on time spent or usage, right? So you have to like, oh, if this one article always does better, I'll give you more of that content.
That's right. Yeah. So
and you want that feedback.
We want that feedback loop. Yeah, and it is important because it could really shape how much we invest in certain parts of our reporting, right? Because that's the that.
Well, that's like the ratings. It's the usage. If you don't know,
right.
You know what the people are doing on your site based on your analytics tool, whether it's GA4, Parsley, or Marful, right?
That's right.
But then you have to know what the LLMs are doing as well.
That's right.
To give feedback back to the editorial leadership and say, here's what's going on.
That's right. So we'll get there. We'll get there with the LLMs. We'll get there in these new deals. In some cases, we've done the deals, but the thing hasn't launched yet. So there's no data yet to be had. But that is going to be a really important aspect of how these partnerships evolve, and then how our organization evolves.
And is the content usage for training or grounding? Is it for both?
It
all depends.
Variety of use cases, variety of models. So there's a lot of nuance in our deals. No deal looks the same as the other, and then we even have we have multiple deals with the same partner. It kind of depends on what that specific deal is for, right? Which product they're launching, and what the use case is within their own company.
Right.
So,
and like how Reddit did such significant deals with Google and OpenAI, right? Because it's a community of the conversation. I always think that whatever content you make, whatever conversations and comments are happening around that would be so good for the LLMs to get as well.
Absolutely. I think that they're hungry for fact-based information. They're hungry for...
Well, they also want authentic information.
Yes, authentic information that is coming from real sources, right? And I keep going to our boots on the ground. We like to call them the boots on the ground. It's our thousands of reporters that are spread across our country, finding those facts, generating those stories, and they're using data to inform what is important to report, right? And we really did make a big shift under the leadership of Kristen Roberts, who is our president of USA Today Media, to really shift toward a data-driven approach to our reporting.
Which doesn't happen all the time.
Doesn't happen, right? No. It's like it shifted from this is what we think you should know versus this is what they want to know more of.
What's the key KPI you use on that side of the house?
Yeah, so I mean it's a variety of metrics, but we look at page views and then engagement metrics on time spent on page and click-throughs and recirculation within.
Recirc's a big one.
Yeah.
Like if you make an article and people come to it once and never see anything else.
Repeat visitors, all of that. So those are the most important metrics to us right now. Now that we have the largest audience in America, we need to really engage with them in a much deeper way. But yeah, what we look at what we're doing as service journalism, and that is really taken hold and is much more significant now under Kristen's stewardship. Is that we are using a data-driven approach to what are we seeing is resonating with these audiences? What do they want to read more of? What information do they care about? And that's what we're delivering in our reporting, and we're seeing it pay off.
I was at a meeting last week where we were talking about Google Zero and Google search going down. And as Google search goes down, you have less people coming to your website. And on the other hand, then the people at your website are staying longer. And then someone brought up the fact, but if Google search goes down to nothing, you're losing the top of the funnel, which means you're not getting these new users to come to your website to become permanent users.
That's right.
And I also believe that publishers are traditionally not that very good at marketing, at bringing people to their website. So how do you replace Google when it goes away, when Google search goes away?
Yeah, that's the question.
That's like the $64,000 question.
That's the question, and I wish I had all the answers to that. And so we are so focused on making sure that we're creating the most value for our readers in, like I said, delivering the information that they really can't get anywhere else the information that they need to live their best lives and go on with their day. That's always what we stood for, is like, let's just give people the facts so that they can move on with their day. And
like you said, you're also down the middle.
Right, totally down the middle, and we're proud of that. And there's no noise, right? So you can come to any of our properties and get the facts right down the middle and very plain spoken. So it's easy to understand, it's easy to digest, and then it's easy to action on. So if I'm reading about the new Bad Bunny tour dates, I can go into that article and I can find out where the tour dates are, how to buy the tickets, where to book my flights and my hotels, and all of that great information. And so we do that across the network for all kinds of local events and all sorts of things that are happening in local communities that people want to take an action on, right? Like if there's a traffic jam, or if there's a street that's being shut down, or if schools are being shut down because of a strike or something like that. That's the kind of information that we're delivering. But also, okay, then what next? What do I do with this information? And then we then help people through that that sort of journey of, okay, now I have to make some decisions on how I react to that information and that news that impacts my daily life.
And how do you think the consumption of news happens in the future? And how do you think habits are going to change? And there feels like they're changing so quickly now.
It's like they're changing and they're not, right? Like I have two children.
Back to, okay.
Yeah. Go back to.
I think you say breaking news. Like breaking news, you're right. Breaking news. You do not ask an AI anything about breaking news.
That's right. So that's always essential. The source of that is always going to be essential. And so often we are breaking.
Some of the sources get obfuscated in the LLMs. You don't even know what the sources are.
That's right, and that's something that we are aiming to change. Right, I think attribution's a really big thing that we, along with other publishers, are fighting for. Right, and making sure that we preserve that. Not only attribution to the brand, but attribution to the journalist, right, who's writing about this. And I think those things still matter. And so that's what I was getting at is, I have two kids and I look at their behaviors.
How old are your kids?
They're in 3rd grade and 7th grade.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're like my little focus group of what's to come. And yeah, like the devices they're using are different, right? But they still care about personalities and trust in who those people are, right? Who's telling me this information and what's the validity of that information? And it's not like I lecture them on media literacy on a daily basis. I don't. This is just kind of how their habits are forming. They still want to be entertained and informed, and they want to go to sources that they trust and they like. And so, yeah, do they ask ChatGPT for answers more than they asked Google for answers before? It's just they've kind of shifted where they're asking, the questions, but they're still then digging deeper and going to, okay, well, I want to learn more about that. So now I'm going to go find those sources, and then they go to those sources to learn more about the thing that they're interested in. And so, maybe it's optimistic. I try to take the more optimistic view. I think, with open eyes and let's prepare for the worst, right? And how do we prepare for the worst? And I think it goes back to the partnering, right? Like we're going to get left out. And if we don't partner and if we become adversarial, right, then we may get left out of how these things change and evolve. So that's still extremely important, is partnering, understanding how these things are evolving from behind the curtain, right, and as opposed to being an observer of all of it. So that's how we're preparing for that kind of worst case scenario. If Google Zero or a massive shift in consumer behavior at the same time. And optimistically, I think brands still matter. will still matter. I think trust in brands and what's behind those brands and what they stand for and how they connect to people. And I think how brands connect to people is through a lot of the, especially on the journalism side, through the people that make that content, make that, generate that news. So that's still so important to us. So that's never not going to be important to us as a company, and I hope that's never not important to the the consumers and the media consuming public. So I think that it'll always change. With if there's a new device or a new modality, like that's just a way people consume it. But what they consume, I think will. People want to get facts. They want to make sure that they're well informed and they're making the best decisions for them and their families. And they're not going to do that based on slop.
Right. Okay. 2 more questions before we wrap up. Number 1 is there anything you think publishers should have done previously that they didn't do, which would have put them in a better place today? And it sort of goes with my second question about blocking the bots.
Mm-hmm.
Like we weren't even thinking about blocking the bots or what a CDN was and how important it is now. What's all your thinking about that?
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to kind of go back and say, oh, we should have done this or we could have done that because, foresight, right? But because I think right now we as a company are taking almost among our peers one of the most aggressive stands in terms of robots.txt. So that I think we got ahead of that as quickly as we could have, while also learning from the times that the time prior to implementing that. We see that as valuable data to understand how our content was being accessed. So I don't necessarily see it as like a miss to not have started that earlier, because we did glean some really important learning, and that's kind of the calling card that we bring into some of these conversations to say, hey, we saw that at this point in time our content was accessed by your robots
right.
X million times a week, and so therefore we should probably talk about formalizing a partnership in some way.
And what I think the trend for publishers is happening now, and there's talk about, is instead of trying to block the bots, which is sort of like whack-a-mole, you allow the ones you have a relationship with via their IP address, and that's the way you do it.
That's one tactic. We have gone a slightly different direction with our partners in that we've set up feeds as opposed to unblocking. So we've because there's some content on our sites that come from third parties, like Reuters, for instance, and so we don't necessarily have rights to distribute that, and so there's other types of third party, advertiser partnership content that we wouldn't want to distribute in those instances. So in most of our partnerships, if not all, we've set up a direct distribution channel. Yeah, but we have looked at some experiments in unblocking certain areas of the
I think
site.
experimentation is sort of fun and interesting to
see
do.
what, to again get some interesting data and learn from it and see what opportunities might come out of it.
Carolyn Harris, thank you so much. Such a great conversation. I love the connective tissue from back in BBC, doing the original deals with Netflix, to today, and how they are sort of one and the same. Have any questions, let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.